I want to switch gears for a minute because of relatively recent developments in Israel and in Gaza. Um, but I have to ask you this. Has AIPAC controlled or corrupted the United States Congress when it comes to aid to Israel?
Well, the fact is that APEC and the lobby more generally has a huge impact on Congress. And it's almost impossible for anyone in Congress to oppose Israel or to support any efforts that the White House might make to curtail Israeli behavior. APEC is a remarkably powerful lobby. And I think, when Steve Walt and I wrote the book in 2007, APAC and lobby more generally was incredibly powerful then. I think it's gotten more powerful with the passage of time. I think it has to get more powerful because defending Israel has become increasingly difficult. It's important to understand that Israel's behavior at this point in time is so outrageous that for the lobby to protect Israel, which of course it does, and it does an excellent job, it has to work overtime. It has to work harder than ever. And of course, as time goes by, the task that the lobby faces is going to be even harder. Because if you look at public opinion polls among young people, and this includes young American Jews, there is great dissatisfaction with Israel there.
But if AIPAC, which is a foreign lobbying group that does not have to register, by foreign I mean it lobbies in behalf of a foreign government that does not have to register with the DOJ. As far as I know, it is the only lobbying group anywhere in the United States that lobbies in behalf of a foreign government openly and notoriously. There's nothing hidden about this, that doesn't have to register. If it has that kind of a vice grip on the Congress, isn't that some sort of a corruption? Members of Congress voting to please the group that will drive them from office if they don't please it, and financially rewarded if they do please it.
We can argue whether whether AIPAC should have to register as a foreign lobby or not. But the fact is that it doesn't. And as long as the law says it doesn't have to register as a foreign lobby, it's free to do pretty much what it wants. If you were asking me if this is a good thing, the answer is unequivocally no. This is a disaster for the United States, and it's a disaster for Israel. And it's important to emphasize that if there were no lobby, if there were no Israel lobby, the United States would treat Israel like a normal country, and we would have a fundamentally different policy toward Israel. And I would argue, and this is what Steve and I argued in the book, it would be better not only for the United States,
but for Israel.
Better for Israel.
Why do you say AIPAC is not good for the United States? That it's not good for American foreign policy? Because there's no rational dialogue about American foreign policy when it comes to Israel. It's just, this is what AIPAC wants, we have to do it. Example, do we have a treaty with Israel? No. Is Israel a legal ally of ours? No. What American national security benefit is served by sending all this cash to Israel, Professor Mearsheimer?
None. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, what we should be doing is treating Israel like a normal country. And if we had done that long ago, we would have pushed Israel to accept a two-state solution. There wouldn't be all these settlements on the West Bank. We wouldn't be in the total mess that we're in today. But no president, despite the fact that almost all of them since Jimmy Carter have tried, has been able to put meaningful pressure on Israel. Look at what's happening today. Joe Biden is clearly upset, deeply angry, maybe a better way to put it, with what Israel is doing, especially with regard to this assault on Rafah. And Biden wants Israel to change its behavior and to not continue the assaults that began on Monday in Rafah. But he can't get the Israelis to do that. Why? Because he can't put any pressure on Israel. Why? Because if he puts pressure on Israel, the lobby will go after him hammer and tongue. And he's running for re-election this fall. And the last thing he wants to do is get into trouble with the lobby.
Here's somebody who had the courage to say to President Biden's face, you have to stop the invasion of Rafah. I don't know if Joe Biden knew King Abdullah was going to say this, but watch the looks on President Biden's face while King Abdullah is speaking. Number 10, Chris.
Nearly 100,000 people have been killed, injured, or are missing. The majority are women and children. We cannot afford an Israeli attack on Rafah. It is certain to produce another humanitarian catastrophe. The situation is already unbearable for over 1 million people who have been pushed into Rafah since the war started. We cannot stand by and let this continue. We need a lasting ceasefire now. This war must end. We must urgently and immediately work to ensure the sustainable delivery of sufficient aid to Gaza through all possible entry points and mechanisms. And I thank you, Mr. President, for your support on this. Restrictions on vital relief aid and medical items are leading to inhumane conditions.
Do you think, Professor Mearsheimer, that King Abdullah said what Joe Biden wanted him to say and what Joe Biden didn't want to say for fear of the political pushback by AIPAC and its minions?
Yes, I think that President Biden, I can't be certain on this, but I do think that he agrees with the king. And I think he's made it clear in private conversations that he's enraged by what Netanyahu is doing. And he's deeply frustrated by the fact that Netanyahu won't cooperate with him. But he cannot say this publicly. He could never say what the king said publicly. Because he'd get himself into deep political trouble, again, in the year in which he's coming up for re-election.
Since you and I spoke last, obviously the slaughter in Gaza continues. We have seen ambulance drivers who were motioned by the IDF, okay, you can go over there and tend to the people we just shot, themselves murdered. We have seen videos of Palestinian prisoners in their underwear being tortured by IDF troops and observed and videoed by Israeli citizens. We have seen a character by the name of Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's the head of Israeli internal security. So he's the equivalent of the head of our FBI, saying the Israeli military and the police that he commands should shoot Palestinian women and children in the head if they come anywhere near the Palestine-Israeli border. So I guess nothing is going to dial back this slaughter. It only seems to be getting worse, Professor Mearsheimer.
I think that that's basically true. I mean, I think that despite all the protests from the Biden administration, the Israelis have done very little to change their behavior. I mean, it is theoretically possible that they won't launch a massive assault on Rafah. I mean, the Biden administration has been pushing them to use targeted attacks on Rafah, to be much more precise in their attacks, to focus on Hamas and go to great lengths to avoid civilian casualties. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you think that the Israelis will actually do that, or that there will be a massive assault on Rafah? And given everything we've seen up to now, I think it would make sense to surmise that they will launch a massive assault. They just don't seem to care at all. They don't seem to care at all about world opinion. It's actually quite shocking to me. One could argue maybe that I'm naive, especially given that, you know, I wrote the Israel Lobby book.
You are not naive.
But I really do sort of wonder what they're thinking. This is going to be a stain on Israel's reputation that is not going to go away for a long, long time. What they're doing is absolutely horrible.
That, of course, is the former Secretary of State and Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, celebrating with IDF troops at some sort of a resource center for them after when they're given a break in their killing and slaughter. Well, why would he do something like that other than for domestic American political purposes?
Yeah, he wants to be president of the United States.
Well, do you think that Joe Biden has given Netanyahu a red line over which he can't cross? Man, if he has, I'd like to know where that red line is in light of the things that have happened in the past week.
No, all the evidence is that he has not given them a red line. And according, I think it was an article in Politico, according to an article in Politico, Biden or the Biden administration has made it clear that even if the Israelis launch a full-scale assault into Rafah against the wishes of the Biden administration, the Biden administration will just sit by and do nothing about it. So I think Netanyahu believes that he has a free pass. He can do whatever he wants. That's the way he's acted up to now. And again, I think it's the way he's likely to act going forward. And by the way, we have not even talked about what is really the next big issue after Rafah, and that is what the settlement looks like in Gaza after the shooting stops.
Professor John Mearsheimer, University of Chicago, one of the most not naive people I know, but self-effacing nevertheless. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure, Professor. Your audience is enormous today, and of course it will grow over the weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Likewise.
Thank you.